It Mwilu in the eye of the storm. Move by Maraga to appoint his deputy as acting chief justice has divided top lawyers down the middle and prompted court action with petitioners citing pending cases against the DCJ. And it's an irony right there when you think about it, with the fact that with the slow-moving judiciary process and judicial process now coming back to bite them with this particular issue as well. Some people are saying if these cases had been dispensed with quite a while back, then we really wouldn't be seeing the quagmire that seems to be at play right now. That story is a lead story in your copy of your People Daily, and it's on page 4 therein. You can get the details of that. Also on page 16, Boeing in a 335 million shilling payout to family over Addis crash. Record compensation by company follows dozens of lawsuits filed in U.S. federal court in Chicago. The story of that and the details of that particular sad story still in your copy of your People Daily, and that story is on page 16 therein. Let's see what else we have in your copy of your People Daily. Chandaria attack puzzles police. Billionaire philanthropist robbed in Muthaiga, one of the country's most secured neighborhoods. How did it happen? The allegations of it having been an inside job as well, but you can get the details of that on page 6 of your People Daily. The details of that are inside there. Let's look at the front page of the Daily Nation now. Let's scroll up with that. State House run too big a risk. Proposal, of course, of the PM or the Prime Minister must be an MP, likely to reduce presidential candidates on that particular front, as people eye a prize where you actually have a fallback position if anything were to happen to you. A lure of power, they call it. In the dispensation proposed by the Building Bridges Initiative, vying for the presidency may be foolhardy, as it could amount to losing everything. Top politicians, including second-term governors, are likely to seek constituency seats with a hope of being appointed Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, or even Cabinet Secretary. That story is on page 4 of your Daily Nation. All the details of that therein. And of course, we'll be talking about this particular process as well, even as it stands at this particular point in time. They're also covering the Boeing payment right there. Boeing pays Ethiopian plane crash victims' family 333 million shillings. Aircraft manufacturer reaches out of court deal with relatives of Kenyan who sued firm in America. That story is on page 6 of your Daily Nation, and all the details can be found in there. Still matters money, and this time on legal costs. 94 million shilling fees? No. Court tells Ogenda. The former LSK chairman, Professor Tom Ogenda, was demanding 94 million shillings from Nairobi County. The court ruled he should be paid 448,328 shillings. That story is on page 14 of your Daily Nation. You can get all the details therein. And even as you look at that, the world talking about vaccine and the African continent scrambling for these doses. Scramble for COVID-19 vaccine as Africa is left out. Many countries on the continent lack financial muscle to fight the crisis, and as had been seen, not only would it be a question of how to mitigate this until the vaccine was found, but once a vaccine was found, who would be at the front of the queue to get these particular vaccines. That story is on page 10 of your Daily Nation. All the details of that can be found there. Let's look at your Standard now. This all focusing on what's happening in Mombasa and Mswambeni later on today. Mswambeni tests Raila and Ruto power. The stakes are high for the big three political players as voters elect new MP today following the death of Suleiman Dori. For Uhuru and Raila, the BBI and their handshake grip will be tested against William Ruto's foray at the coast. For the DP, it's about flexing muscles in readiness for the 2022 grand duel. That story is on page 8 of your Standard. You can get all the details therein, and also we'll be giving you plenty of coverage of that right here as well on the show. I'll be keeping you up to date, not only on the show, but also across the day as our reporters give you keen analysis, of course, and report on what's happening in Mswambeni. Finally, front page of the Star now. Uhuru men prepare Mount Kenya group ground for Raila. Populous region wants key positions in ODM leaders' future government. This is what is at play. This seemingly what's at stake. Bigwigs line up series of meetings across Central to endear him to voters. This is what we're looking at right here. But there's an interesting juxtaposition. You look at it side by side. Look at that headline, and let's scroll down to the picture that's right there. As Uhuru men prepare the ground for Raila, This is what we're staring at right now. You pay for expensive tenders. Why not pay us? Medics ask. And this has been the plight right there. They were demonstrating yesterday as well. Still no conclusion as to how this will be carried out moving forward. And this really is a crux of the matter as far as the healthcare system is concerned. How do they avert the strike? Of course, they'd been given 14 days for the doctors to actually settle and come to an agreement on how that would be sorted out. But even as we talk about that right now, we have clinical officers and nurses as well who have downed their tools as far as that's concerned. And that's also something we'll be talking about right here on the show. But before we do that, let's set the stage, because today definitely a momentous day as far as the Msambweni by-election is concerned. But not only for the people of Msambweni, but also this particular by-election having far-reaching political implications. Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission has warned that it will not allow voters without masks in polling stations in the highly contested Tuesday Msambweni by-election. ODM party leader Raila Odinga recently indicated that the by-election will be a litmus test for the BBI initiative, a bill on whether it will get support or not. 69,000 registered voters are expected to participate in the exercise.
The Msambweni constituency by-election, the Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission (IBC) has warned all the voters to ensure that they observe all COVID-19 protocols by wearing masks, ensuring social distance, adding that sanitizers will be put in all polling centers.
We have a special clerk who will be in charge of handling issues with the new norm. Voters are expected to come to the stations masked.
Addressing the media, IBC returning officer Abubakar Yusuf said they are set to conduct the exercise in a free, fair and transparent manner, adding that they are only referees in the by-election, dismissing claims by a section of politicians that the IBC is being used by some candidates in their favor.
What we will announce here will be the final result. We don't have a preferred candidate. Each voter ataenda atekeleze wajibu wake ya kidemokrasia na kuchagua kiongozi wake. Ile sisi tutafanya hapa ni kutangaza matokeo kutoka kwenye polling centers ama polling stations. Vile POs watatuletea ndo tutatangaza. The by-election has been viewed as a two-horse race between ODM candidate Omar Boga and Deputy President William Ruto-backed independent candidate Faisal Abdallah Bader. Wiper Party candidate Sheikh Mahmoud Abdul Rahman lamented claims that he had withdrawn from the race as social media was awash with fake Photoshop K24 TV photos that he said were allegedly fabricated by his opponents, with Embakasi South MP Musili Mawadhe saying that they will not be cowed by propaganda against their candidate.
Mimi Sheikh mpaka leo nipo na nitakuwepo, na katika karatasi ya ballot mtaniona jina langu, na naomba huu uvumi huu watu wauachilie mbali.
Sisi candidate wetu ambaye ni mheshimiwa Sheikh Abdulrahman ama Sheikh Mahmoud Abdulrahman bado yuko kwenye kinyang'anyiro. Sijui kuna wengine ambao wanaeneza propaganda, na nitawaonesha mwaiona mtu ambaye ametengeza amefanya Photoshop.
Meanwhile, election observers group coordinator Mule Musai say that they had dispatched observers in all 129 polling stations to monitor the by-election and ensure a credible poll.
Tuko na observers pia sisi ambao wamekuja kwa ground, tutakuwa tunashirikiana na wenzetu kuensure kwamba vituo vyote vya upigaji kura ambazo tuko nazo 129 zote zitakuwa na waangalizi wa uchaguzi.
Tuna observe yale ambayo yatakuwa yanaendelea katika sehemu hii wakati wa kura. Isije mtu akakosa kwenda kupiga kura kwa sababu ya insecurity katika sehemu fulani. Kwa hivyo ku prevent masuala kama hayo, polling stations zile ambazo ziko katika hotspot areas tumeweka observers wetu, watatupatia hints na sisi tutatumia hints hiyo kupeana kwa police.
The Msambweni poll has been heavily associated with the political battle between Deputy President William Ruto and ODM party leader Raila Odinga, who are seeking to have control of coastal region ahead of the 2022 general elections. Giverson Minor.
Thanks for that report, Giverson Minor. And I think I can also definitely report that was indeed fake news. I saw a picture of myself right there. Man. Rough and tumble of the world of politics. Let's get into that as well. In studio, joined by public policy analyst Arnold Maliba. Morning.
Morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana, welcome to the show.
Asante.
Also joined the conversation via Skype from Bomet governance expert Justice Minor. Good morning. Morning, Justice. Okay, we'll be trying to figure out what's happening right there as we sort out that technical hitch. As we're talking about this right now, Arnold, for the people of Msambweni, they're looking for representation between now and 2022. But it seems there's a much bigger play when the former PM says that this really is a testing ground for how popular we are, how this initiative will be taken at the ground. What's your take on this one, on the stakes at Msambweni today?
You know, whereas all politics is said to be local, the truth is that during a by-election, there are much more interests than what is just local. So for the people from Msambweni, it's not just about their representation. It is also about other interests like political party strength. We have got BBI, and like the former Prime Minister rightly says, it's also a testing ground. You know, this thing doesn't just happen in elections only, even during war. For very many wars, even if they are local and whatever differences people are fighting for, some bigger powers always find ways of coming to test their weapons. So it will be very common that people are fighting in Somalia, but the Russians and the Americans are actually putting in their weapons to test and see their efficacy and to see how it works. Same thing with politics.
Right.
So for the people from Msambweni, it's very unfortunate that even as they look for their representative in parliament, there are other forces at play, and they really can't run away from them because whereas it's about them at the local level, Msambweni is in Kenya, so sometimes forces in Nairobi and elsewhere also play out here. So the problem with that is that then it can sacrifice the very interest of the people by ending up with a choice that does not necessarily represent them. But they are where they are today. They are out there today. Guys are queuing. Please go out and make the choice that will represent you. Because whoever represents you will not, it will not be about BBI. At the end of the day, it's about whoever is your voice in the National Assembly and how your CDF is managed. Okay,
and even as you look at that, there's also the interesting aspect because as it's been called out right now, we have Uhuru and former PM, President Uhuru and former PM Raila Odinga on one side, and the Deputy President backing a different candidate. How does this play out even after this election? Are we talking about the fact that even from the executive, nothing will be done now because clearly you have the president and his principal assistant backing two different people in an election?
Actually, the Msambweni by-election is actually quite funny for the simple reason that the president has kept away from by-elections. By and large, the president has avoided by-elections. It's the deputy president and, of course, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga who has been actively in this thing. But we saw in an event crafted just as a sideshow where the president appeared with the ODM candidate in Msambweni. He has not done that even for his own candidates. Of course, he appeared with Maraga shortly, and Maraga had to go to State House. So, and it's crafted in a way that the deputy president was unable to go to Msambweni. It was expected that he would be there over the weekend. But once the president appeared with the ODM candidate, then it became clear that if the deputy president appears in Msambweni with the other candidate, it will be a direct challenge on the president. So he stepped back, and of course the media reported that after the president showing up with Boga, then it became difficult for the DP to show up and then support the candidate who is said to be his choice.
Right.
So it's quite out there. It's a very big thing, and you realize that even the president is lending his effort to the other candidate. Of course, if it's in support of his brother Raila, it's so much big. So, like they say, it's a test of the handshake. It's not just about how BBI will go, but probably a lot more things in future.
Okay, we're also joined by Executive Director, East Africa Center for Law and Justice, Joy Mdifo. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show. I
apologize for my tardiness.
Apology accepted. Right now, talking about the Msambweni by-election, and we've seen the DP. This is the second occasion where he's fielding a candidate who people say this is his candidate. We saw that with Maraga. Now we're seeing this again in Msambweni. What's he out to prove at this particular point in time? What's the stake for him right now doing that?
I think it's more of an interest, expressing an interest without expressing an interest. You remember what happened in Kibera? There was the talk that Jubilee is not going to field any candidate. And it's the same thing that Msambweni happened, that we're not going to field a candidate in favor of, quote-unquote, a handshake candidate. But the DP has always been of the thought that, you know what, Jubilee is still a party. We ought to test our party strength against our opponents, just like it would be in any other election or by-election. But we have seen a consistent, how do I put it, it's like pushback where a seat was originally an ODM seat, Jubilee intentionally not fielding a candidate so as to just, you know, in the spirit of the handshake. And so you saw at the beginning of this race where there was an attempt to field a Jubilee candidate that was successfully thwarted by the people at Pangani. But I think the DP still felt like, you know what, this is a place, like Arnold correctly said, we need to sort of try and measure where we are at. As far as I'm concerned, Faisal is supposed to be an independent candidate. But even when you listen to the rhetoric on the ground, he's rumored to be the DP's candidate. And so this will definitely be a test of powers, a test of might, a show of might, to see, you know what, when you're talking about numbers, you're talking about mobilization, it's sort of a dry run to see, can we actually push this forward? There's a few other by-elections also that are coming up at ward level, and also a few members of parliament who have rested from their labors, and the Senator Machakos. So there's opportunity for this to play out over and over again. But I agree with Arnold. It's not necessarily for, I need more numbers in parliament or anything. This is more to test my networks on the ground, my mobilization strategy, my get out the vote strategy, my protect the vote strategy. This is an opportunity for everybody to sort of hone their skills, as it were. It's the warm-up to the big. So it's like playing friendlies. This is where you make sure that, you know what, you're still limber. Yes, you make sure you're still limber and you're ready for the big one.
Well, that's the first time I've ever had Joe actually use a soccer analogy on politics.
Oh, really?
But you see, Jeff is avoiding football for obvious reasons because of the team he supports.
Let's just leave that for now. Let me get Justice in.
We are with him in that particular predicament, so we leave it, yes.
I'll get Justice in on this one as well, because some people are talking about the fact that when we have these quote-unquote handshake candidates, as we saw in Kibera, as we're seeing in Msambweni, what does that mean for the spirit of democracy at play at this particular point in time moving forward? Or are we putting, you know, unity above democracy in this particular regard? What's your take on these handshake candidates?
Certainly, the issue of a handshake candidate is, in my opinion, is imposed on the psyche and the minds of Kenya. The handshake itself is not a byproduct of the whims and the feelings of Kenyans. So, not a bad thing initially, but then again, I don't think it would be proper to use the handshake again to take away the democratic rights of the parties, because ideally, Jubilee is a party, but then again, there are individuals within Jubilee that exercise more power than the rank and file members of Jubilee party. Because I do not think it was the feeling of the members of Jubilee not to field a candidate in the first place. It was the leadership, and in this case, maybe the party leader and some of his close friends who decided for the sake of a handshake, they would rather not field a candidate. So to me, the fact that the president of the country, who comes from the ruling party, the majority party, both at Senate and the National Assembly, going to take a Photoshop with an opposition candidate for the sake of the handshake, I do not believe that enhances democracy or entrenches democracy, but rather it may undermine in the long run. And then secondly, I believe the president endorsing the ODM candidate is not a bad thing, essentially. Only that I wish he had built consensus with his deputy president and a number of individuals within Jubilee Party who may not essentially agree with the direction president has taken with his close associates within Jubilee to. And remember, in my opinion, I think it is all about advancing the interest of Raila Odinga. This is not about Boga. Basically, it's about the interest of Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga was to be beaten today in Msambweni, that would greatly injure and undermine his run for 2022 presidential election. So I think the president and his team is trying to preserve Raila, is trying to portray Raila essentially as a winner, because I don't think they are willing to see Raila lose Msambweni by-election. And remember, every time there is an election, either it's Jubilee or ODM seems to pronounce themselves and say this is a test run for the next election. They say that in Nyanza when ODM was beaten by an individual called, was it Ocheng? They also say the same in a by-election in Nairobi recently, where their candidate was beaten. And therefore, it is an emotional statement to try and whip the emotions of the supporters to believe that this is not about a by-election. This is about 2022. And remember, generally, elections and democracy is about appealing to the hearts and the feelings of electorates. It's not an intellectual conversation. Usually, when politicians talk, they come up with slogans that try to appeal to the hearts and the feelings of electorate, and that is why the idea of bringing in the 2022 election is very convenient to whip up emotions and make the voters not to vote for Boga, and essentially, but to vote for Raila in this by-election. So I think it's all about whipping up emotions, essentially, and ensuring that Raila in this by-election through Boga wins, and hopefully wins massively.
Arnold, I want to come to you even as we get to our first break, because even as we talk about the big political players at play, I want us to focus on the media as well. Because for someone who's probably just trying to get the news on what's happening in Msambweni, you'd be mistaken that there are only 2 candidates. Yet there are 6 others who are still trying to vie for this same post. How do we, even as a fourth estate, level the playing field so that Boga and Faisal and the 6 others in the race get equal shine, so to speak, as they try and put their best foot forward in the race?
In our electoral laws, it is required of the media and the fourth estate, as you've said, to grant equal opportunity to as many aspirants, or rather everybody equally. But normally that's, in practice, it is on paper, but in practice that becomes a little bit difficult because people are chasing ratings. So if you're going to appear with a candidate whom will not give you ratings, you look like you do not know what you're doing. So even as the media tries to balance out, I also think that the media is also chasing what is popular for obvious reasons, because bar for KBC, all media houses exist for purposes of making profit, and ratings also go towards that end. Though there is no deliberate effort, I must say, by media houses to grant all, because they are guys we have never seen. You will see their name on the ballot paper for the first time. They can actually be just mentioned in passing. There is no deliberate effort. And this is a by-election. You know, if it was a general election, you would say, okay, we've got the whole country running. It's impossible. But here, the media had an opportunity to just demonstrate how fair it could be. But then they were not able to pull that. Again, you will think that the people of Msambweni, in and of themselves, do not have a voice. Because you see the people whom we are quoting is Aisha Jumwa, who comes from a neighboring county. There is Sifuna, who comes miles and miles of counties away. Those are the people and the voices that are being captured from Msambweni. Not even the people of Msambweni. We have not even seen the governor, who is actually holding fort on the other side, campaigning seriously, being highlighted seriously. But we would rather give the Aisha Jumas of this world and the Sifunas of this world, using not very friendly, not very heavy stuff and important and enlightening stuff, but using epithets, using very dirty language. Those are the things that we are propagating. So there are 2 ways to look at it, the commercial end of it and the sensational bit of the media. That we would rather run with the sensational, we would rather run with the slander, other than what really matters. Today, if I asked you, Jeff, what are the issues in Msambweni, even as the people of Msambweni go to elections, that the media has highlighted, they have done none of that, but they have actually told us about 2022. They have told us about who is strong and who is not. They have shown us about people using very lurid language, words and language, but not the issues of Msambweni. So on this, purely a little bit of the media let it slide.
Okay. Joel, come to you in a minute as we close this particular first half. Former PM Raila Odinga has said that this will actually, it's a testing ground for how the BBI initiative and the referendum will progress when they get to that particular stage. If their candidate loses, how will this inform their strategy moving forward? What difference will happen as they hit the ground for the referendum process?
First and foremost, I think it's a tactic that Kenyans have wisened up to, where you take the by-election and decide, you know what, guys, it's not about the by-election, it's actually about something else. Or we start using the strategies you saw Jubilee using, you must vote 6-piece. Otherwise, somebody will be coming out without a shirt, or he won't have shoes. You want people to go without shoes. And this tactic used by politicians, this gaslighting attitude, used to be very successful once upon a time, where you appeal to the emotions rather than to common sense and to other considerations when you're making a choice regarding who's going to represent you. But I think Kenyans have sort of wised up to that. So if you tell me, if you don't vote for my candidate, then it means that BBI is... This is oranges and potatoes. It's two different things. Right. It's not the same conversation that we are having here. And so if you've got a strong candidate who has got, the Swahili parlance is, uza sera, sio sura. Tell people what development is going to come, what is the agenda from Msambweni, how are you going to bridge the gaps, where the former, the deceased MP left, where are you going to pick up? That's what people need to hear. But if you come with stories of, you know what, if this is not supported, then this is also not supported, you set yourself up for failure. Because, like you asked now, in case then the candidate is not successful, the ODM candidate is not successful, but BBI passes in Msambweni, where does that comparison there fall? Right. But in terms of what is their strategy, in case they lose this, it's going to cost them. Because one, there has always been the thought that Coast is an ODM stronghold, and it goes without saying. So the fact that an independent can come and actually trounce and change that is going to be a major upset. Okay. The second thing also, moving forward, it would mean that there is a lot more groundwork that needs to be done. We've talked about the governors and who are supposed to be very strong on the ground and have all come out in support of this candidate. The president and the former prime minister have all come out in support of this candidate. If all that still does not sway the voters in the way that they want them to, it also has a talk about people power, where people have gotten to a place where it's not the Ramzatas that they're looking for, they're actually looking for something else. And that, for me, will mark a maturity also for Kenyan voters, because we've always assumed that all they need is just 1 week or two to the election, give them this blitz, you know, tumia pesa kidogo, and people will just be so wowed that they will think how you want them to think. This will be also a reality check on our politicians that, you know what, maybe it is time we start talking to wananchi as reasoning human beings and not just using the euphoria to mobilize people towards a certain direction. But I also hope one thing it does is that it sort of tries and cures the perennial voter apathy with by-elections, because part of having that Ramzatas is to try and get people out to vote. Because traditionally, by-elections, you don't even get 25% turnout. Okay.
We'll be giving more coverage on that, of course, right here on the show. We'll be giving you live coverage as it takes place in Msambweni. That brings us to our first break on the show. After the break, even as we talk about how much verification of signatures will cost, healthcare workers are still up in arms, still holding placards. How do we solve this issue once and for all? It's a discussion we're having right here after the break. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV on Twitter. The WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. Back after the break.